Welcome to the Erie Wellness Podcast, your go-to source for all things health, wellness, and living your best life right here in Erie. I'm your host, Lauren Brunetti, and I'm so excited to have you here. Each episode will dive into conversations with local experts and wellness professionals who are making an impact in the world of health and well-being. Before we jump in, be sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. We love hearing from you and seeing our community grow. Now let's get started. Hey friends, welcome back to the Erie Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Brunetti, and today we're jumping into something that a lot of women in our community are walking through, middle life transitions. And I'm sitting down with Gretchen from downtown Erie Counseling. She's an amazing, down-to-earth therapist who really gets what women go through during this season of life. We're talking about everything from perimenopause, aging parents, to shifting roles in marriage and the emotional roller coaster of watching our kids grow up. Whether you're in the thick of this transition or just starting to look ahead, Gretchen brings insight, tools, and reassurance to help you feel more grounded, more connected, and more at peace with where you are right now, including ways to work through decision fatigue and to stop being so hard on yourself to get everything just right. Welcome, Gretchen. Can you share a little bit about your journey into psychotherapy and why you're passionate about helping women in middle life?
Well, my journey into psychotherapy, it started when I was probably in high school. For some reason, I knew when I was a freshman in college, I declared my major the first day. So I don't know what drew me to it exactly. I grew up with both of my parents were teachers, and it was very clear that I didn't want to be a teacher. And so psychology was just really fascinating to me. I remember being really little and saying to my dad that I just wanted to understand how the mind works, which I don't know where that came from, but so I always kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. And I worked in the field for 30 years in an agency with a small private practice. And then it was actually during the pandemic when everything shut down. I was working here in downtown Erie where I live. I live in Old Town, and I just realized how lovely Old Town is and how lovely Erie is. And it had been a bedroom community for me for almost, at that time, 15 years. And I just thought, well, I don't want to drive anymore. And Erie's wonderful. And so it was quite serendipitous that an office space opened up, and I ended up resigning from the agency where I'd been for over 30 years and decided that really this age group is underserved. Women 40s and over, there isn't much about it. There's more and more coming out now, but even 5 years ago, there wasn't much. Mm-hmm. And I had a few clients who I'd seen since they were in their 20s, and now they're in their 40s. So in some ways, we kind of aged together. Mm-hmm. And I find this period of life really fascinating. So it kind of I grew into it, actually. And one of the things that I noticed with clients in this age group is that it can be really helpful to have a therapist who is closer in age. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of years working with much younger people, and it was nice to do that when I was younger, because we had more in common. Right. So that's how I got here.
Well, it's nice to see the progression in your career and kind of now helping women. I feel like we're most equipped to serve those that we once were. So kind of getting to help women walk the path that you've recently walked and getting to share those experiences with them.
Yeah. Thanks.
For women who are new to therapy, how would you describe what psychotherapy really is and how it can help during these times of transition?
Yeah, great question. So there are so many modalities of psychotherapy, and they really vary, and yet it comes down to a relationship with another person. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the type of psychotherapy that I practice is really in the most simple form. It's helping people put their thoughts and feelings into words. And the way that that is helpful, sometimes we go along in our life and we don't actually know what we're thinking, but our thoughts are very powerful and they influence what we do. But if we don't know what we're thinking, then we can act in a way that's more impulsive. And then we can make a mess. We get into trouble. So, working with someone and practicing putting thoughts and feelings into words. And then as the therapist, I get curious about what's said. And so then we get curious about what's going on in one's mind. And what ends up happening is that uh, when a client gets familiar with their mind, then it's not so scary. Like sometimes you can be afraid of your mind. Like, where did that anger come from? Or why am I so attached to this thing? And we don't have to be afraid of our minds. Our mind is like, the best thing ever.
Well, I mean, even just thinking about the term of like psychotherapy sounds so daunting. But when you break it down to it's your thoughts and your words essentially and how that all comes out, it's much more like, oh yeah, I can handle that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing that has come up in conversation, and you and I even talked about this before we recorded the podcast, is that many women are kind of taught to dread menopause or perimenopause and kind of as the symptoms, come about. But how can we shift the conversation to see it as meaningful or even empowering to women in this middle life?
I love this question. I love all of your questions, but this is such a great question. I think it's the question. And what I like about it is that you get at the narrative. So there's this narrative. At first, nobody talked about menopause. It was a taboo subject. It was hush hush, only with your doctor. And then, women were medicated one way or another to get rid of it. And then now that it's being talked about more, there's this notion of like, well, it's going to be horrible, but you'll get through it. And it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, really, if you think about it, every phase of life has its challenges. I mean, cramps, they're not fun. Birthing pains, I haven't heard anyone say, no, it was great. They say it afterwards. And so this is just another part of life where the body changes and sometimes there's hot flashes, which aren't great, but I actually like them better than cramps, So it's what we tell ourselves about it. And actually, in other cultures, this phase of life, this transition, is venerated. So in a lot of the folklore in Europe, Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, there are all kinds of characters that show up in folk tales. Older women who hold this sense of power and who wisdom and a calmness, or a fierceness that we don't often see, in Vogue magazine. It's actually starting though more and more, right? Where older women are starting to show up.
Right.
Martha
I think we
Stewart.
mentioned it, like CEOs in their 50s,
Yes, that's
strong
right.
women, powerful women
That's right.
are in this stage of life, but still doing a lot of things.
Yeah, doing more things. And in some ways, it can be more settled. There's less distraction at times. So I do like this notion of changing that narrative, or at least being curious. Maybe it doesn't have to suck. Maybe it could be enjoyable and powerful. Maybe there's some relief of not having to be, this kind of young, looking like someone who's 20. Oh, well, what's beauty at 60 or 70? Or Martha Stewart is 80. Jane Fonda is 85, and they're gorgeous. Right. So we don't get to see that so much. But I think just even asking the question is starting to suggest that it isn't fixed.
I love that perspective of, and we even tell this, and me, because I'm, in my 30s and raising children, like just enjoy the season that you're in with your kids. And, whether they're newborns or toddlers or grade school or teenagers. Like, just try and enjoy every season. And you should be telling yourself the same thing. And especially women who, we've been kind of taught to dread this season.
Yeah,
so we
that's
need to
right.
really change the story.
Yeah. Or at least ask a question.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does it have to?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So, what makes this season, specifically, late perimenopause, even into menopause, caring for aging parents, launching kids out into the world, building sibling and partner relationships, so emotionally complex?
Well, I mean, this is where I get so fascinated. And you've it's been common recently. This sandwich generation
I love
comes
that
up.
terminology when you put that together.
Yeah, well, so this sandwich, I've been thinking about that term
Mhm.
because there's an assumption of like, oh yeah, right. You got aging parents on one side, you've got kids on another, you've got your spouse, and you're in the middle somewhere. But there's this kind of secret sauce in this sandwich, and
Mhm.
what that secret sauce is, in my view, is the relationships. So these relationships, we get pulled into a way of being. So, for example, when I'm with my mom, who's 95, I can sometimes feel like I'm 14 and I still get in trouble, right?
Mhm.
So it's called in psychotherapy terms, it's called a regression. So I kind of regress back into being 14, or, a much younger age and a much younger way of functioning. And that's when it's not examined. And then all of a sudden I'm switched into, oh, I'm running a business. Like, oh,
Mhm.
wait a minute. And then I'm working with a sibling, and a sibling dynamic that's not been worked out. I found in my practice, there's a lot of sibling abuse that doesn't get addressed. So let's say you're then pulled in, you've got adult siblings that come to town, and the relationship hasn't been even considered in decades.
Mhm.
So then all of a sudden there's this competition, mom loves somebody more than the other. So it can get really messy and really confusing.
Mhm.
But uh, what what's really, really helpful in terms of psychotherapy at this age is to kind of tease out these different aspects of ourselves and give them all room. Like that
Mhm.
14-year-old, like she can show up, but she's not the only thing that's happening. And
Mhm.
the sibling relationship, noticing like, oh, I get pulled. That doesn't mean that I don't have any choices. I can notice the pulling, like if I'm in trouble with my mom,
Mhm.
I can notice that and then still uh, address her as an adult
Mhm.
and be kind and, not get too rattled. The
Mhm.
feelings are still there, but then I have a choice,
Mhm.
or, we call it a sense of agency there. I'm not just kind of pulled around
Mhm.
by all of these different uh, people that are from different stages of my life.
Mhm. I love that you're helping women coach them as they approach these situations, because I feel like so many women go into family events, graduation parties, and they come out of it and they're like, I didn't handle that well, or I was cringing the whole time,
Yeah.
versus enjoying this event and trying to kind of, you know, blend all of these different relationships into
Yeah.
a fun time just
Yeah.
to.
And it might not be fun, different things happen, but it's more likely to be enjoyable if we're present
Mhm.
and if we recognize, oh, I know what that is.
Right.
Okay. I know what's
Mhm.
going on, and I
Mhm.
can actually come back and be the host or be the guest, or be present.
Mhm. Yes, it's so important to bring that awareness around us
Yeah,
as we head
yeah.
into things like that, and kind of relevant because this upcoming weekend is high school graduations for so many women here
That's
in
right.
Erie.
That's right. There's graduations and weddings, and
Mhm.
any of these events can kind of disrupt as we get older. We all, in terms of siblings, like we all kind of find our comfortable distance. But then there can be a family event that's joyful or a funeral, and suddenly we're kind of pulled back in and, oh, it's too close, So that's when it's really helpful to know your own mind.
Mhm. Yeah, and knowing, how often is okay with me to see these people and need to interact with them and all of those things. What am I comfortable with? Where I'm like, I'm not going to ignore my siblings, that's not something I want to do, but I need to always kind of have this nice little buffer zone that we can kind of be around.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right.
Um, so with that being said, how can women protect their own well-being while pulled in like so many directions? And how do you want women to feel?
Mm. I think we do get pulled in different directions, and um, the way to protect ourselves is to know our own mind,
Mhm.
because when really what we just addressed in the last question kind of gets at this one,
Mhm.
and that is recognizing, taking the time to recognize, like, oh yeah, there's some things that happened, there's some things that went down,
Mhm.
and I can't go back and change that, but I don't have to be locked in that way of being.
Mhm.
I can kind of present myself in each situation where I am now in my life. And I can recognize, oh, I've learned from what's happened in the past. And that's a great protection.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So many women in particular in middle life are making lots of decisions every single day. They're making decisions for themselves, they're making decisions for their kids, their spouses, and parents, aging parents, and we can feel very overwhelmed by those decisions that we have to make. Um, Managing work, family, health, and everything in between. How do you help women navigate decision fatigue and information overload without feeling like they need to fix everything all at once?
Mm. Oh, that's a
I
big
know it's
one.
a big question because there's a lot of things.
Yeah. So these decisions, I think in some ways it's so great that we have so many choices with everything,
Mhm.
right? We have so many options, and that's a good thing. However, it can lead to that burnout, fatigue.
Mhm.
And so one way to approach it is to actually limit the options. So I had an example of this in my own life, and I think we all did, one way or another. But in 2019 and early 2020, I found myself running around all the time, going from one thing to another, just rapid fire. From whether it was self care, getting a massage, getting a pedicure, getting my hair done, doing these things that are great, and then a movie, and then work, and then trips. And it was overload.
Mhm.
Then when things shut down, even though you know, it was a huge, it's such a huge worldwide impact, there was part of me that really relaxed
Mhm.
when there weren't the choices. The choice then became, do I go for a walk or do I stay in my yard?
Mhm.
And there was something about that it was really enjoyable. So then what I learned from that is, oh, I don't have to just pick up and kind of go back to this rapid fire
Mhm.
of all of these different choices. So that would be sort of the first,
Mhm.
is to know that we can actually limit the number of choices.
Mhm.
The second part of that question is this notion of needing to fix everything. And so that we can get curious about that assumption that we
Mhm.
can fix anything.
Mhm.
Uh, but we can't, because there's so many variables.
Mhm.
We can't, we can have a contingency, but we can't fix things. So then the key is really putting confidence in knowing that we can respond to what comes up. So, for example, yesterday we had our first farmers market. Well, we can't control the weather, right? We can't control, who comes or who doesn't. That's beyond our control. It's not reasonable to expect that we can. If we need that kind of control, don't have it outside, right? But we can respond. Oh, I could put up an umbrella. Oh, I could take down that thing that's going to blow around in the wind. We can respond. So just shifting our assumption a little bit can really help us relax. Then, oh, I can respond. Well, then vacation can be enjoyable because I don't have to have it all planned. I know that I can respond. If somebody gets sick, oh, we don't go to Disney that day. We do something else and it's just fine. It's perfect, actually.
Yeah. Two things that kind of came up when you were talking is limiting the number of choices that we have, which is great. And I think a lot of women in particular need to think about, like, are the things that you are doing, are they really benefiting you? Do you really need the massage, the facial, the nails done, all of these things done this week when you're just stressing yourself running around all over town? And you have everything going on. I think we mentioned when we were talking earlier, like having seasons of like it's massage season during the winter and it's pedicure season in the spring and summer because that's when my toes are out, so not feeling like you have to do all of those things if they're not really essentially bringing you joy and you're not relaxing when you're participating in all of those things.
Love it. Yes, I really like that. That in that it doesn't feel like you're having to deprive yourself because it's just, you don't have to have them all today. You can actually be present at one and really enjoy it, and then it's actually, then your financial health isn't suffering
Exactly.
too. Yeah.
Right. And then you're worried about, but I need to be doing this.
Right. Right. That notion of like, oh, I need to because it's self-care. We can question that. Like, is it? Like,
especially when your stress levels are up to here. And we know how much stress and cortisol impacts our health and how our body functions.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then two, the, like you said, the vacation, and having a choice and choosing joy, even when something difficult, kid gets sick on vacation. Well, that's a bummer that we can't go to Disney today, but we're doing an inside movie day and we're going to enjoy it and have the popcorn and do whatever and make the most out of what we have right in front of us.
Yeah.
And I think women, because of social media too, I feel like we have this idea of what a perfect vacation needs to look like, or holidays in particular. I know for me as a new mom, it took me several years to realize that not every Christmas is going to look like a Hallmark Christmas. In fact, I have not had one Hallmark Christmas yet in 10 years of parenting. And I think just kind of letting loose with those expectations for sure.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's a setup. And secret's out, there's not a Hallmark Christmas. It doesn't actually exist, Right. But I think recognizing like, oh, well, we can make do with this and see what happens. There's this notion of what happens when life goes off script. Well, it goes off script all the time. Can we respond?
Right.
And that's where things get. I think that's where we gain a lot of strength. Is when life does go off script. If we have our mind set on things going a certain way,
we're going to be disappointed our whole lives.
That's right. Right. Yeah. And we won't know how to respond because we'll think, oh, it was my failing that it rained.
My bad planning. I should have picked a
different day. Right. Yeah. That's a setup.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's such a great perspective. I did want to bring up this example because it came up in one of my mom's groups, but especially wellness things. Like, do you use fluoride? Do you buy organic? Like just some of those like little tiny things that sometimes I feel like us as moms put so much pressure on ourselves that it needs to be a certain way. Like, well, let's go with the organic example.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't buy organic that week, or if it puts a financial strain on us, our kids will go through 2 pounds of strawberries easily in one day. We have 3 kids, so going through a 2 pound carton of strawberries happens very easily. And that's, or eggs, like we're feeding a large family. So constantly going through those things, but really assessing like what's the priority, is fluoride really going to do damage to your kids? Thinking through those and not putting as much pressure, because there's so many things on social media that's just spraying at you that like, this is the way it is, and this is how you should be raising your family. If not, you're not a good mom.
Oh man. Wow. That's a doozy. And I think, first off, there's so much pressure to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so little perspective. We can't know. And even the science is always moving.
Mm-hmm.
It's never static. So one day fluoride is a good thing. The next day it's a bad thing. The next day organic is good. The next day, oh no, we needed to have those pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way to get it right 100% of the time. You do the best that you can. Mm-hmm. I think it's good to know what ingredients are what. I think there are some things that obviously are carcinogenic, but we can't know everything. Nobody does. Mm-hmm. And so I think just having a sense of doing one's best, knowing that there's going to be mistakes, and again, this sense of, and we'll respond. Mm-hmm. If we can really trust, like, we'll respond. Right. I mean, in my lifetime, the things that used to be common practice that aren't anymore, I'm so glad for the knowledge that's, come out, but it's certainly confusing, mm-hmm. but you're not going to get it right. So just letting go of that. Oh, phew, I'm not going to get it right, mm-hmm. but I'm going to get something right. Some of it is going to be, but not all of it.
Mm-hmm. And, if in a perfect world, our kids probably wouldn't be resilient, like they learn resilience a little bit, all of those kinds of things too. Or, even I was talking with a mom about birthday parties every year. The expectation that we do these huge, grand, giant birthday parties. And it's like, that's not the thing for every family isn't able to do that. So, putting things into perspective and setting new routines for your family. We celebrate every other year with your friends,
right?
Versus, and on the odd years, we do a nice dinner at home just as a family.
Yeah. I think you're totally onto it. It can put so much pressure, and it can set these precedents that get out of hand. And mm-hmm. so I think recognizing that you don't have to follow along with something, whether it's your kids' friends or, something on social media, you don't have to. You can choose to, but you don't mm-hmm. have to. And, will your kids really remember that 4-year-old birthday? Or is there something else, like going to a park and going on a slide? Mm-hmm. You don't know what they're going to remember or what they're not. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much pressure about it, but it doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. And you get to decide, as parents, co-parenting, really that's your responsibility to ask that question. Mm-hmm. Do we really want to do this? Is there a better way that we could try?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know, because even, with the birthday party thing, you see all these like elaborate birthday parties, and you're probably thinking to yourself, oh man, I need to like hold these expectations. And then you ask your kid, like, what do you want to do? And it's, I just want to like have donuts and whatever it is that they choose. And in your head, you thought you needed some elaborate celebration.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a good point too. What are some practical ways that women can support their emotional health during middle life, even outside of a therapy setting?
There's a lot. So what popped in my mind with this question, practical things that women, men, that everyone can do outside of a therapy session to be supportive is, I think first off to recognize what's going on in your mind. And um, if if we're feeling anxious, one thing that can be really, really helpful is to connect with our senses, like to really get simple. So, for example, one metaphor that I really like is when we don't really look at our mind, if we're not in touch with it, it can be like coming home, walking into a room with the stereo totally blasting, and then we try to read a book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's pretty hard to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if we can work to calm our mind down, then we can relax. And one of the ways, a helpful way to calm down our mind is to connect with our senses, quite literally. So sometimes I'll have people, um, I, I, I call it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I got this somewhere. I didn't make it up, but
I was like, it sounds like a Mel Robbins maybe or something.
well, so I have people look for 5 things in their field of vision. So there's a plant, there's a lamp, there's a clock, there's a couch, and there's a painting. 5 things. And then I might have them listen for 4 sounds and then touch 3 things. And it doesn't have to go in this order.
Mm-hmm.
And then so listen for 4 sounds, touch 3 things, smell 2 things, and then, just recognize what the taste is in your mouth. What that can do is it can help kind of relax the nervous system and get you out of that fight or flight stress place into rest and digest. So out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system. So that can be really helpful as a starting point. And then beyond that, I really think one of the most helpful things is to find a way to be kind. And it doesn't have to be another person. Sometimes we're just too contracted to even relate to another person, but it's pretty easy to be kind to an animal, to our pet. Or if that's hard, you could be kind to a plant. But the power of that, of finding a way to be kind, is that it's pulling us out of this contracted, kind of self-referenced place and more open. And that is a very powerful thing to do. That's a very helpful thing to do.
It opens us up for receiving more.
Exactly. Exactly. Giving, and if you think about it, giving is only in relationship to receiving. So we're able to give, we're able to receive. It's that flow. But when we're contracted, nothing comes in and nothing goes out. Right?
Absolutely. I like your first example too, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, especially as working parents and or people that work from home. You're kind of in your go mode at work, and then so many times you're transitioning extremely quickly over to parenthood or interacting with your spouse. You just have to walk out the door and life, a whole new world is right around you. So kind of reminding yourself to take a couple of seconds, maybe when you're transitioning from mother or, to workspace to home life, and giving yourself that grace, especially because I know so many people are working from home nowadays.
Yeah, it's a good point. When really before COVID hit, some people worked from home, but most people had that transition time of a commute, which had its own problems. But what it did was it allowed people to transition. They'd listen to the radio or a podcast or music, and when you're just walking from one door to another, it's really fast. So taking a moment to just connect with your senses, it can be a way to transition in a little more graceful way, a helpful way.
Right.
Yeah.
Even just like family events, if you're going to be in
if
it's a little stressful, it's like, okay, I'm going to be doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on our way to this family event or whatever's going on.
And kids love it. Kids really love it. They connect to it right away. They get it. Like it's a nice game for them. And then it can train them like, oh, I can, not be like screaming my head off because my balloon popped. I'm sure you know that one.
Yes. Yes. So, how can people set up an appointment with you, and what can they expect during their first therapy session?
Mhm. So appointments, I'm just a one therapist shop. So it's just directly with me, and my website is downtowneriecounseling.com. And they can just go through there. There's ways to it'll send me an email, and there's also a phone number. We just set up an appointment and see if it's a fit. There's, we co-create it together.
Okay.
And in terms of what to expect, um, really, we just sit down and talk about what's going on, and what would the frequency be if we decide to work together. And we check in about that as we go, and if there are other people involved, if there's a psychiatrist involved, there may be some connection there, not necessarily. Or if someone is working with hormone replacement therapy, there might be a connection with person who's working with that, so that it's a kind of a more cohesive treatment, so that we're not kind of working in the dark. So I might, with the client, talk about what they're doing with their hormones. I might talk to the person, with permission, of course, where they are. The person who's prescribing may really be helped by hearing what's going on in terms of the therapy. So I enjoy doing that kind of collaboration.
What would you say are some of maybe like 3 or 4 of the like main things that you primarily see? And maybe it's some things we've already talked about, but that women are coming in feeling like they need your assistance with.
One of the things that I'm seeing now, and it's been showing up a lot, is as kids age out and transition, how do the roles change? So recently, I've been talking to people about parents. Parents get to graduate too, and nowadays it's pretty tricky for people to graduate and move out and rent an apartment, for example. The economy doesn't. It's just not easy to do. So sometimes adult children are living at home with their parents, or they're coming back from college and they're staying at home for a while. And so how do those roles transition so that so that everybody isn't pulled back into a former way of being? Like, how does it transition into a house full of adults, not parents and children? So, agreements like, well, can you have friends over? And what does that look like? How do you communicate that? Who's cooking meals? Who's doing the shopping? How, all of those things.
Do you have a curfew now that you're like an
Right.
adult? Like,
Yeah. So just renegotiating the agreements can be really fun and important, especially for adult children, because otherwise, how do they learn how to be in the world with their peers, So that I see a lot. I also see this, we touched on it before, adult sibling relationships. I think it is a fascinating and really kind of unseen dynamic. How do adult siblings relate to each other? And typically there's going to be money involved. There's going to be care. So it can be a really emotionally challenging time that they're relating, if they don't relate all the time, but that I find really interesting and quite common, more common than I expected. And then of course, this notion of, what does my life look like if I retire? Do I retire? Do I pick up something else? Do I start a new career? So those kind of transitions, I see that a lot as well. Yeah.
There's a lot of things that happen in middle life, all of those different scenarios.
That's right.
I mean, like, I feel like so many women, if most women, are going through all of those things at some point.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's not unique.
Right.
I mean, each person has their unique things that come up because we all have our own experiences, but it's a human condition, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there any upcoming community events or programs that you're offering? I know you mentioned the Thrive Summit that's happening this fall, if you wanted to elaborate on that.
So yes, the Thrive Summit Perimenopause and Beyond is happening October 5th down in Denver. And it's a half-day event, and it is going to be a pretty big deal, I think. I'm going to be on a panel. My part is going to be small, but the whole thing is going to be quite an event. There's going to be a screening of the documentary that's called The M Factor. And
I need to watch that.
Yeah. Then there's also going to be a keynote speaker is Dr. Kelly Casperson. She wrote You Are Not Broken. And then there's Dr. Lauren, actually, I don't think she's a doctor, edit. Then there's also Lauren Tettenbaum, Dr. Christine Marin, and it's going to be kind of an immersive event. There's going to be incredible food. There's really great sponsors. So I'm excited about
and what
it.
an honor to be, asked to be on the was it a guest?
It's a panel. I'll be on a panel.
What an honor to be on the panel.
I'm thrilled. Yeah, the brainchild of this is Stephanie Traver, who is with Vital, and you did a podcast with her.
On.
Yeah. So this is her baby, and she's really she's going for it. So I'm really excited to be part of it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I'll make sure to is there a link to register for the event yet?
Yes.
Do you know? Okay.
Yes.
Maybe I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. If you put a link to that, that'd be great.
And it's all day, right?
It's a half day.
Oh, half day.
Half day on a Sunday, October. And actually, Stephanie was saying that September is perimenopause month, and then October is menopause month.
Oh, nice.
So
perfect timing.
Yeah, it'll be really good timing. Yeah.
What is one message that you hope every woman in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond really take away from this conversation that we had today?
It's not too late. You're not late. It's the right time. It's the perfect timing for whatever is in front of you. It's the perfect timing. It's not too late.
And how do you want women to feel? Like, walk away. Obviously every day is going to look a little different, but with this flow that we talked about a little bit, like, how do you want women flowing through life, as they continue to move on to this middle life and beyond?
I want women to recognize that they do have choices and responsibilities. So it's our responsibility how we work with our minds. And we don't have to be afraid of our minds. Our mind is our biggest gift. We don't know anything without our mind, if you think about it, right? So we don't have to be afraid of it. We can be curious about it. We can work with it. We can let it express all that it expresses and not feel like that's our failing, but that's actually our superpower.
Or get upset about, why did I even think of that? Let it be a thought and assess it and see, is it really like a thought that defines me or a thought that I need to move past?
You got it. You got it right on the nose. We don't have to believe everything that we think. We can't not think. It's like bubbles coming up. They just come. But we don't have to think that any particular thought is or isn't real. It's just a thought. So that gives us a lot of opportunity to relate in all kinds of different ways. We're not getting it wrong because we had a thought. Where we can get in trouble is if we are impulsive and kind of glom onto a thought and then act out of an impulsive place rather than responding out of a place of having kind of more choice or more agency.
Oh, well, thank you, Gretchen, so much. I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and compassion with us today. Your work really is such a gift. And I know our listeners are walking away feeling more seen, supported, and empowered. So thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Lauren. This has been so fun. I really love what you're doing. I think that this is serving Erie and beyond. And it's like you're on this kind of path going through the woods, finding all these incredible practitioners who have their own expertise. It's amazing what's right here, as far as businesses and offerings. So I really appreciate your work that you're doing. It's so generous of you.
Well, thank you. That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Erie Wellness Podcast. I truly appreciate you being a part of this journey. If you loved today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. For more daily wellness inspiration and behind-the-scenes content, be sure to follow me on Instagram at the Erie Wellness Podcast. I can't wait to connect with you again soon.